Hello, I'm Lee Bernick, Dean of the Greenspun College of Urban Affairs, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Urban Report. Today, I have the privilege of introducing my first guest, who is a colleague of mine in the School of Social Work, Leroy Pelton. Leroy, welcome to the Urban Report.
Thank you.
And Leroy, you've been in social work, you've been here for how long in the department, or in the school?
I came in 1997. I've been there for 16 years.
For 16 years. And unfortunately, Leroy, you've decided to retire. I say unfortunately, it's our loss, your gain in this whole thing.
Thank you for saying that.
So before you came here, you were at other places, and can you give me a little description of your background?
Well, I started out in psychology. I got a master's in psychology from the New School for Social Research in New York, and then I went to get a PhD at Wayne State University in Detroit in psychology. So my first position at a graduate school was actually teaching in the psychology department at State University in New York at Albany. And between that and a little college called Susquehanna University, I spent about 9 years teaching psychology. But then I decided to leave academia for a while, even though in the back of my mind I always knew that I would return again. And so I left for about 10 years. And these years were very exciting because I got into child welfare. I was hired into the New Jersey Division of Youth and Family Services, which is the state child welfare agency. And this was just a turning point in child welfare and child protection laws at that time in 1975. And this was very interesting work to me. And I did, at that time, publish a paper called Child Abuse and Neglect, the Myth of Classlessness, which attracted a lot of attention. It still gets a lot of attention today because I was trying to promote a different paradigm or describe a different way of looking at child abuse and neglect than what was common at the time, and still somewhat common, unfortunately, I think, but which was to look at child abuse and neglect only in a psychological defect way, that there's something wrong with the parent and that's it, and that explains the abuse and neglect. It was actually psychopathology that they were attributing the abuse and neglect to. And I was said, well, let's look at from a different perspective. There might be a social context to child abuse and neglect, and there are environmental factors influencing what we call abuse and neglect. And so I wrote the article called Child Abuse and Neglect, the Myth of Classlessness, because I argued that there was a strong relationship between child abuse, neglect, and poverty. And if this was the case, then we should be approaching our policies, should be approaching abuse and neglect in quite a different way than we were. We should be providing more concrete services and supports to families so that they'll be able to keep their children with them and safely with them.
So the intent was to really understand the issues and understand that it wasn't something inherent in the individual that was causing this. As you say, it's a contextual effect.
Certainly not solely.
It's solely.
Not solely in the individual.
But that it was a contextual effect of the fact that there was poverty and issues surrounding poverty that would cause this.
Yes. And since I published that paper, there's been a great deal of evidence that confirmed my original arguments about it.
So I know that, so really then this question of child welfare has been the centerpiece of your work in social work, isn't that?
In social work, yes, yes. Although I started out doing research in cognition and perception, and I'll be getting back to it now that I retired.
Now that you're retired, you may go back to that, but I want to focus again, while you've been here and you've been working on and talking about child welfare kinds of issues, right?
Those issues and about justice. So while I've been here, I've published 2 books on justice.
Okay.
And their implications for social policy of what I call frames.
And when you say justice, what are you saying in terms of justice on this? When you say social justice, right? You're talking about economic social justice or legal social justice? I
just use the term justice, but it has social policy implications, and I talk about different ways of construing justice having different policy implications to them. And so in my last book, published in 2005, Frames of Justice, I talk about a group justice, which I sort of put in quotes because it's, some might think that's an oxymoron because justice should concern individuals. And then I talk about justice as individual desert, which is a very common approach that we take to justice. People should get what they deserve and deserve what they get. And then I go on to talk about what I call the principle of life affirmation, which are policies that affirm life without exception, condition, or even consideration of deservedness or undeservedness.
Okay, so in that last one, we just have a few minutes or so left. In that last one, what you're really arguing on is that independent of class or anything else, there's a certain level of justice that one deserves, right, as a human being. Is that what?
Universally, just as a human, just by virtue of being a human being.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just have another like 45 seconds, minute left to go. Tell me what you would say is what you would like to think as you take away from in retiring. What's your takeaway about being a professor in social work for you?
Well, it's been a very fulfilling career, and here at UNLV in the School of Social Work, I've been fortunate to be surrounded by people who are supportive and collegial, I think, and this is very important to have your immediate working environment to be a pleasant one. And so, and I think because of that, I've been able to be very productive, both in working on these justice issues and continuing my interest in child welfare.
Okay.
Also.
All right. Well, we're going to have to end this. I'm sorry. It's way too short. But we have to take a break right now, and we'll come back for our next segment. Thank you. Thank you, Leroy.
Thank you.
For others, it may have just been a summer job. But for me, it was training. Now I'm an Air Force pararescueman, and my job is to save lives. Make the right choices today and be ready for the challenges tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Air Force.
Think you found every hazard out here today? Think again. The spot you missed could be a killer. That spot on your skin could be skin cancer. Fact is, if you're a man over 50, you're in a group most likely to develop skin cancer, including melanoma, the kind that kills one person every hour. 1 in 5 Americans is likely to develop a form of skin cancer during their lifetime. That's why your best shot is to check for a spot. It's easy. Follow through and check your skin. It could be the save of a lifetime. Go to spotskincancer.org to find out how. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Winston, just one more inning, Grandma.
Ever notice how many things today kids can do without actually moving? A whole lot of things their parents used to do the hard way. So many kids' activities today seem to leave out the activity part, which makes exercise even more important for children. In fact, new research tells us the best time to enhance bone development is during childhood and adolescence. And just getting children to walk an extra 35 minutes a day could spare them the pain of thinning bones later in life. Healthy bones come from healthy habits. Encourage your kids to get up, get out, and get moving.
Hello.
Hey, Grandma, how about another grape soda?
A public service message on building strong bones for kids from the Pediatric Orthopedic Society of North America and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons.
Welcome back to the Urban Report. And in this segment, I have a colleague from UNLV Foundation, Carrie Alburn. Yep. Carrie, welcome to the Urban Report, and I guess welcome to UNLV. It's been a short time that you've been here, right?
Absolutely,
How long?
just 10 months.
10 months.
Yes, my husband and I moved here from Washington, D.C. last June.
Okay, and what were you doing in Washington?
I was assistant head of school for development for a school in Washington, D.C., and my husband was head of a school in Virginia.
And head of a school. When you say a school, elementary, secondary,
My
college?
husband was elementary school, preschool through grade 8, and I was also in elementary school, preschool through grade 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you came out here, and now you're at the foundation?
Yes.
Right? And what's your official job title at the foundation?
I'm director of annual giving.
Okay.
So I work with all of my colleagues in the different colleges and units, the directors of development, with our alumni and parents and friends, trustees.
I'm gonna stop you for a second, okay? So annual giving, we want giving every year anyway. Now what's unique about annual giving?
Much of annual giving is unrestricted. So then it's up to the leadership of the university to determine how those funds are used each year. Some of the annual funds, Dean's Associates, for example, are really up to the deans on how that's used each year. And then also in the Rebel Athletic Fund, that's for athletics. So it's annual giving is a compilation of unrestricted Dean's Associates and Rebel Athletics.
And annual giving is as opposed to the big gifts kind of thing. Is that right?
Yes.
Right.
So annual giving ranges from pretty much $5, and our largest gift is $25,000.
So, okay, so some people give $25,000 annually.
Yes.
Right?
We're very fortunate.
We are fortunate in that case. So what are the methods that we invoke or use to get people to contribute on an annual basis?
Well, I think you know as a dean that people give to people. So the best way to invite someone to give is to sit down with them and invite their support. Now, we have 130,000 people around the world. So the next best way is by phone. And so we have the Rebel Ringers program. I'm sure you've heard of that, where we have phoners all year long, students who call our alumni and invite their support every year. And we also now use social media. So we're using email and Twitter and Facebook to keep people educated. And then, of course, we have the UNLV magazines and Innovations and Premiere. So there's lots of ways through the that we can do it. Absolutely.
A whole host of activities that you can do to bring people. And do you have any idea, and I may be throwing you off here, maybe I shouldn't ask you, what percentage of our alumni give, or how does that work? I mean,
it's a fair question, and one of the things that we've realized is that not everybody gives every year, but on average, about 5% of our alumni give to UNLV. Our hope is that we can grow that number. And one of the biggest things that we have to do is find our alumni, because people are so transient and they move around a lot. We do have about 60% of the alumni living in Nevada.
Right.
So we try to, kind of reintroduce ourselves to people as they're moving around. But like today, I just talked to somebody who's in Utah and has just moved there, and we were able to find him.
Okay. Well, I do know that I don't know what your target is as the percentage of our graduates is in terms of, do we have a target for how many?
No, 100%.
100%. That would be really unique.
It would be.
It would really be unique. But I think one of the things is it's not so much how much they give, but rather that they give, right?
Exactly.
Even $5.
Yes.
Because at some point they might give more at some other time, right? It's
Absolutely.
nice to know that people are supportive of the university and are willing to give even $1, $5, $10.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right?
And one of the things that we're trying to help people understand is that it's really important to support something at the university. And if we can help introduce people to the various, colleges or units or programs, scholarships, that sort of thing. And in fact, that's one of the things that we're working with you on.
Right, I was going to get to that. Yes, we want to get to that in a minute. But so you have the student phone.
Yes.
Is that payoff? Is now, I mean, do we get people to actually give when you call?
Absolutely, absolutely. They reach out and complete about 55,000 calls a year, and only about 3,000 of those actually make a specific pledge. But another 3,000 are saying, you know what, I want to do something, let me think about it, that sort of thing. And then we have about another 3,000 now that we're in conversation with. And that's something we've started this year, is even if they don't pledge, we're reaching out to them and talking.
Well, you mentioned something that we're partnering
Yes.
with you, and I did want to bring it, and that's with a memorial and scholarship fund for Leonard Pat Goodall.
Yes.
Pat was the president of the university at one time, and then became part of public administration.
Right.
And you're involved in that with us, right?
Yes.
And tell me, can you tell us a little bit about how you're involved in
Sure.
this?
Sure. Monica called me and said that you all had decided you wanted to do this, and could I, just look at the letter that you wanted to mail to the alumni from the classes in 1979 to 1984, because those were the primary years that he would have signed their diploma, kind of thing.
Right.
And so we looked at the letter, talked about the approach, and it was a strong message. It's a clear message of inviting people to support something that was important to President Goodall. And so with that then, we decided to segment some of the calls that we're making. So now that the letter is out, starting in late May, early June, the phoners are going to then call the same group and say, we hope you received the letter, and we'd like to talk to you about supporting it.
Okay.
So it's that personal touch following up on the letter.
Right. And I think that's important, and I hope our audience will, and if you're an alumni, or even if you're not an alumnus of the university,
right.
Pat Goodall was a strong supporter of the community, involved in the community, and we'd like you to contribute to the Goodall Fund. And I know and I appreciate you having the students call. It'll make a difference in our efforts here.
Yes.
I've got to end this segment of the show, but I do appreciate you coming on, talking about the foundation and your role in annual giving.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. We'll take a break and for this segment of the Urban Report. Thank you.
If you could see anything in the world, what would it be?
I'd love to see Paris.
I like to see cupcakes falling from the sky.
My daughter, married and happy.
I want to see things the way I used to.
Chances are, someone you love may one day be affected by macular degeneration or glaucoma. Log on to seeabettertomorrow.org or call 1-800-437-2423 to learn about glaucoma and macular degeneration. Call 1-800-437-2423 or log on to seeabettertomorrow.org.
I just want to see more of the things I love.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
At what age is the color that your skin was meant to be no longer beautiful? Every year, millions of young women try to change the skin they were born with and say they die for darker skin. Sadly, some actually do. Melanoma is the second most common cancer in teens and young adults, and one person dies from melanoma every hour. Change your thinking, not your skin. Stop tanning. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
Something's not right.
My first symptoms were
constant tingling in my toes.
My legs, sometimes they'll go numb.
I had double vision. They said you have multiple sclerosis.
Well, the beginning is the hardest time.
Kind of had to get a grasp on reality.
I had to adapt and change very rapidly.
I had to learn how to drive with my hands. Yeah, that was interesting.
I was a dancer. I don't see walking the way I walk any different than doing a dance. It just looks different. It's a different dance.
You see me have an off day, it doesn't take away from who I am.
A symptom may cause you not to be able to do that anymore. And at one point, I wasn't able to do any of those.
But I would exercise every day.
Since I've been cycling, it's definitely helped my walking.
To make a lot of changes in my life and just adapt to it.
I'm going to acknowledge its presence. I'm not going to discount it. But at the same time, I'm going to try my best to not let it stop me.
It's a fantastic opportunity to be working together with a common goal of curing MS, and sharing is the key.
I want to welcome you back to another edition of the Urban Report, and in this segment I have the distinct pleasure of introducing someone who has been a student of mine, isn't that right?
That's correct.
And a colleague, and now I guess someone who is off and away and doing her own thing in Washington, Sonia Horsrud. Sonia, you are from here, and then you went to Colorado State. Tell us a little bit about the background here. You went to Colorado State and majored in?
I went to Colorado State and I double majored in speech communications and journalism and technical communication is what they called it then, with the focus on television broadcasting. So I was really interested in making an impact through media, and started off being interested in on-air, was a little shy, and then decided that I was interested in production and even what news directors did in terms of setting the agenda and deciding what to cover.
Okay. And so being in the studio shouldn't be new to you at all. You did this when you were in college, is that
Still get butterflies,
yeah.
But yeah, it is familiar.
Okay. And then you came back to Vegas.
I did. Well, I left and said I would never return to Vegas, and immediately came back to Vegas after graduation. I actually spent time in Southern California with E! Entertainment. I had a National Academy Television Arts and Scientists summer fellowship there, which was, it was ironic because I really wanted to do serious hard news and ended up at E! Entertainment. Okay. But did that and then came back and worked at Channel 8 with Emily Nielsen. She was the news director at the time.
Okay. And then from there?
And then from there, there was a position at the City of Las Vegas. And a producer from Channel 8 actually left to go work and run communications at the city, had noticed and told me that she thought I was a really good writer, and that they had a public information officer position open. There are actually 2 positions. And so I worked as a PIO in the Planning and Development Department.
All right, so in the City of Las Vegas.
Yes.
Planning and Development.
Yes.
And you were doing public information.
And I knew nothing about planning and development at the time.
Okay.
Sorry to say.
But you knew how to write.
I knew how to write.
That's okay.
And how to get the message out.
And get the message,
yes.
and ask the right questions.
Correct.
Okay. And then tell me, in this whole period, when did you start? I know you got your MPA degree. When was that in this cycle of things?
It was while I was at the City of Las Vegas. I really enjoyed working in government and local government. After working as public information officer, I was appointed as a city council liaison to Lynette Boggs McDonald, who was a former city councilwoman.
Okay.
And really wanted to learn more about public administration, learn about the process and managing a city and what that entailed. So I enrolled in the MPA program here at UNLV.
And then, then you went over to the College of Education. Was there a break in time between getting the MPA?
There were children, a lot of children.
Okay. Not a lot.
Well, children throughout the, I was always, well, I shouldn't say it that way, but balancing work, school, family was definitely, something that I was balancing throughout that time. After getting my MPA, I actually studied charter schools. If you remember, you served on my committee and looking at charter school legislation in Nevada, which was becoming popular, and had always been interested in schools. And there was an educational leadership program here, and I decided to apply.
Okay, and you got your doctorate in
educational leadership.
And the dissertation was about?
It was about the perspectives of African American superintendents who attended all black segregated schools and the desegregated school systems.
Okay, now wait a minute. So they attended all
schools
black
under segregation, so many of them attended schools during the time of
elementary and
segregation.
secondary education,
Correct.
Not the historically black colleges.
Some of them did attend HBCUs, and some attended predominantly white institutions.
Okay, but they grew up in those historically black segregated schools.
Communities and schools.
Communities and
yes.
schools. And then they became principals or superintendents?
Yes, they all aspired to the superintendency. That was one of the criteria of the study. And we're doing this, obviously, in a time of desegregation.
Okay.
And so getting their perspectives on those different contexts and kind of getting their reflections on where we are today in terms of educational equality and opportunity.
Okay, and what's the single takeaway from that? From your
single takeaway, there were many, but I think one is that the experiences that they had were fairly positive. I mean, they obviously were not thrilled about segregation. They were really protected by their parents, families, and communities from, the very negative impacts of segregation. But at the same time, they received a nurturing schooling environment with teachers who really demanded a lot from them, parents who had good relationships with the teachers, and a community that supported them educationally. So that was, I think, an interesting takeaway when we think about segregated schools. We often think about, you know, tattered textbooks and limited resources. But there were some positive aspects to their experiences.
Right. Well, good. And then from there, you were in the department for a while, and then you went over to Lindsay, right?
Yes.
And tell me about.
I feel old. I've done quite a bit.
Yeah, you have. That's why we want you here. Okay. So tell me about Lindsay. And we had a briefing today about Lindsay, and you were there. What was the major focus of your work at Lindsay?
The major focus was how we improve education in Nevada. We face a lot of challenges here, but really trying to reframe those challenges into opportunities, and ways that we can do that include really improving and developing a system of early childhood education that supports and gets students off to a really strong head start as they proceed into elementary education. Another piece was the importance of family and community engagement and making sure that everyone plays their role in supporting schools and really advancing an agenda that focuses on investing adequately and equitably in our schools. And the last was really that funding piece, making sure that we have a state finance system that puts enough dollars into
That's always one of the keys. I know that people say money doesn't make a difference sometimes. There are some people say that, but you and I know that it really does make a difference.
Well, it makes a difference in business. It makes a difference in almost every sector, but for some reason when we talk about education, it doesn't. But I think it's important across the board.
And unfortunately, and I just have to, we only have about 30 seconds left. Unfortunately, you've left. You're in Washington, and for a variety of reasons, right? Your husband is now in Washington, and you've got a new job there. Can you tell us a little bit about your job in Washington?
I'm excited to say, although I'm sad to leave the Lindsay Institute and my Lindsay family, I will be starting this fall at George Mason University as an associate professor of education. So I'm looking forward to doing some good work there.
Your focus there, and when you say associate professor of education, is there a particular focus? Is it on leadership?
My primary affiliation is leadership, and I'll be looking at leading for equity and opportunity.
Okay. Well, we have to wrap this segment up, and I want to thank you and good luck at George Mason. I know you'll do well in your position. Thank you for attending, or watching, I should say, this edition of the Urban Report. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please call the Dean's office at the College of Urban Affairs. Thank you.